The Amazon in Project Diablo 2 is well known for brutally killing everything with ranged weapons. But there's another side to the Amazon that I've been wanting to explore lately. For today's video, I wanted to check out the Fend Spearzon to see if she's capable of brute forcing her way through the video game. Naturally, I decided to make this Amazon in hardcore single player, mainly because I like starting fresh, but also because I keep getting booted off the servers on my barbarian. It is what it is. And joining us today for this very special occasion will be the very famous Margot Robert. Among the elites of society, she's also known as the Pegging Lady, but that's a story for another time. Today, I'll be sharing my experience playing through the campaign as a fresh Spearzon. My hope is to eventually get her into Ubers and Declone, but as of right now, I have to worry about not dying a horrible death beforehand. So with all that being said, it's time to do the thing. I started things off by respectfully jabbing a group of dead people. So far, so good. Sometimes I would throw a javelin or two at mobs I considered dangerous or if I was feeling lazy, usually laziness. My first real spear of the playthrough was found somewhere in the underground passage, and I could now begin role-playing as one of those lancers you see in the Cold Plains. I spent most of Act 1 using jab against every single mob, despite it taking 22 frames to pull off. My attacks were slow, but the damage itself was pretty decent. It only took 3 hits to get the Countess to explode her entire body. I did a few more Countess runs so I could get the usual runes and levels I need to survive this old video game. The rest of Act 1 continued to be as non-threatening as possible. Soon enough, I made it all the way to Andariel. I completely and utterly ignored everything around me, hoping that the splash of jab would just kill everything. But that didn't happen at all, but thankfully, everything died anyway. Andariel was dead, and it was now time for Act 2. For Act 2, I had 2 very important and very clear goals in mind. First, I needed to reach level 18 so I could unlock the Fend spell. Second, I needed to not die from these absolute bastard lightning beetles. Fend was especially important because I was starting to feel the burn of the melee splash radius nerf in normal difficulty. Being animation locked for 22 frames didn't help things either, but that wouldn't last much longer anyway. After getting a few levels, I hired a fellow spear handler that was capable of giving me the Blessed Aim aura. Blessed Aim would keep my attack rating high enough to consistently land my attacks throughout most of the game. When I reached level 18, my brain compelled me to unlock the Fend spell as soon as possible. With my main attack unlocked, I was now truly playing the video game. Fend was definitely the spell to use for multiple targets. And then I almost fucking died to a singular Unraveler in Talrash's tomb. Where did I go wrong in life? But I survived long enough to vandalize this incredibly ancient and historical tomb. The way to Duriel had been opened up. I knew right away Duriel was going to be a bastard, but it still shocked me when he killed my mercenary in like 2 hits. But the Spearzon was picking apart Duriel's health despite being wholly frozen for several eternities. I just needed the merc to not get his face caved in because I sure as hell wasn't going to face tank him. I critically struck Duriel until he willingly chose to die. The fight was mildly terrifying, but Duriel went down all the same. Even though I was still using a level 1 spear that dropped in the underground passage, Act 3 was going much better than Act 2 did. Fend was able to systematically dismantle the evil Satan Rainforest within a reasonable amount of time. Then I ran straight into a cursed extra strong spider who asserted his dominance in a threatening manner. The big reason why I had relatively low HP was because spears like this one requires very large amounts of dexterity and strength to even use. But what am I gonna do? Not use a spear on a Spearzon? We do what we must. But now that I was using a real spear, I was perfectly capable of brutally murdering the council with no problems whatsoever. Then it was time to run straight into Mephisto. My plan was to not get myself one-shot. Suddenly, the mercenary died under mysterious circumstances, but it was okay because I was able to burst down Mephisto within just a few seconds. Mephisto went down, and he went on to drop a pair of unique chain boots. A pair of excellent boots that are meant for a completely different spec, but it's still 30 faster run walk, so I immediately put them on. In Act 4, the Spearzon continued to stab and penetrate several things at once in a satisfying manner. Now that I had an actual spear and a few points in Fend, the build had started to feel like an actual functional build. The only thing I needed was a non-zero amount of increased attack speed along with cannot be frozen, but I was still a ways off from that. I proceeded to do the Hellforge, hoping to get an Am rune, but the game thought I could do bigger and better things with this Ort rune instead. Screw you too, game. Then I ran through the Chaos Sanctuary while still using a completely regular unsocketed Maiden Spear, and that seemed to work out okay. Then I ran directly into a Venom Lord pack while being cursed with lower res. It wasn't my bestest brightest moment ever. Lord Desace was killed until he died, and you already know what happened to the Grand Vizier. I also hoped that I could kill normal Diablo by standing perfectly still while repeatedly jabbing his brain. His attacks did entirely too much damage. The mercenary voluntarily absorbed Diablo's laser with his face, and now I was left to my own devices. Then I took an entire laser after locking myself into the jab animation while being frozen. Not my bestest brightest moment ever. My new plan was to use Fend for the rest of the fight, because Fend was just a singular attack, and it actually did a fair amount of damage on its own. Due to my suboptimal quantity of attack rating, it was actually difficult to even land an attack on Diablo, but I did whatever damage I could while weaving in and out. Eventually, Diablo died a miserable death. The hardest boss at normal difficulty went down. Now it was time for Act 5. I was in search of any kind of 4-socketed spear weapon because my damage was starting to fall off a little bit. On my way to Anya, I would end up dropping a soul rune, which was the crucial ingredient needed for making an insight. That gave me something to think about. After gaining a few levels, I was finally able to use a Maiden Pike. It nearly doubled my damage, and it would hold me over until I could get a real weapon made, assuming I don't die horribly to the Ancients. Then it was time to die horribly to the Ancients. My plan was to keep my health above 0 while fighting all 3 of them at once. I have PTSD from doing so many Hell Ancientses in my other runs, so I always forget how easy the normal Ancients actually are. And because the Spearzon is an effective boss killer, I was able to pull off a triple homicide within a reasonable amount of time. The Ancients were extremely dead, and the way to Bale had opened up. Then I arrived at the Bale Waves, and the Spearzon proceeded to take everybody's lunch money away. Even the minions were only a mild threat to my existence. One by one, I was able to pick them apart. Even Lister wasn't able to put a dent in my HP. That was until he put a dent in my HP. Finally, it was time to face the weird tentacle crab demon Bale. I chunked him for a small amount of HP, but unfortunately, Bale was like 30 levels higher than me, and he has as much health as a small nuclear submarine. He also cloned himself, which means now there was twice the cold damage, twice the mana drain, and twice the tentacles. Then I got tired of that stupid clone, so I ported away to town, came back, and continued the stabbing process against Bale. After a while, Bale had been mildly annoyed to death. Normal difficulty was finished. Bale dropped a nice little 2-socketed helm with Magic Find, and the Spearzon was now known as Destroyer Margot Robert. With normal difficulty finished, I could begin the next phase of my existence. And that phase would involve me doing exactly the same thing, except every mob had slightly more HP and damage. I hit level 30 right as I went into Nightmare. My resistances were looking just a little red, which meant I needed to pick my fights extra carefully. I was using an Eth War Spear because Nightmare weapons have a higher splash radius than normal weapons. All my other gear was quite literally whatever garbage I happened to pick up during my murder crusade against Satan. Naturally, I focused my skill points on Fend and Jab. My plan was to max Fend and then Jab and later on Penetrate. I had 1 point into the 1-pointers and a few points into Critical Strike. I thought I had 40%, but turns out I only had 35% the entire time. Thanks, brain. Aside from my resistances, I felt like I was in a pretty good position to start Nightmare. But I needed a plan, and the plan I came up for Nightmare was to run directly into huge packs of mobs and hope I didn't die. So far, so good. Even though I was stuck with a completely regular, non-magic weapon, the Spearzon was still capable of cutting through most of Act 1 Nightmare. My actual, non-meme plan was to do a few Nightmare Countess runs for some badly needed levels and runes. I also kept my eye out for any 4-socketed exceptional quality spear to make literally any rune word with. Sometimes the Countess would only drop a singular Tau rune, but I was also getting gems to craft items with. Most of my crafts were completely degenerate, but still way better than using a 1-socketed ethereal war spear. After 10 or so Countess runs, she dropped both a soul and a shale rune. By now, I definitely had all the runes needed to make an insight, but I still didn't have an exceptional base. I have to come out with this video sooner or later, so I decided to Larzik this maiden pike for 4 sockets and call it good enough for now. But as it turns out, there's actually another item that I can make. Rampage gives an extremely convenient 65% increased attack speed at the cost of a singular shale rune. Now I could attack so much faster, and the damage itself was still respectable. The pegging lady continued to peg her way through the video game, and before I knew it, I had already reached the evil satanic boob lady. The violence was gratuitous. The conditions of the fight were completely unfair, but that's exactly how I liked it. Soon enough, Andariel had been brutally murdered in her own home, and I could now move on to Act 2. The Spearzon continued to be gratuitously violent all throughout Act 2 Nightmare. The build was feeling a lot more functional now that I had a non-zero amount of IAS on my gear. I searched Cold Burrow's brain for any kind of ceremonial pike or spear, but no luck was had. I searched this incredibly toxic snake pack for a possible Lycander's flank, but all they had was a rare military pick. Fend and Jab have a ton of enhanced damage baked into the skills anyway, so it didn't really matter for Act 2. I was ready to try out my new extremely fast weapon against Duriel, but unfortunately, Duriel said, "Eat Holy Freeze, stupid." I'm not entirely familiar with Duriel's lore, and I definitely don't understand why he has to have Holy Freeze. I think he's supposed to be a paladin demon, if a paladin demon spent all of his time shopping at Walmart and eating McDonald's. The Spearzon was able to completely stand up to this fat bastard until he died to death. We're going back to the evil Satan jungle. Act 3 is great because I get to commit war atrocities against the indigenous peoples of Kurast. They're evil, so it's okay. The video game refused to give me a flare skip, which meant I had to deal with clones while not having max lightning res. Thank you, game. While I consider Act 3 to be generally easy, it does have its spooky moments. Running into the council while not wearing a shield or not having max res can be sketchy at times, but Jab was great for picking them apart. Easy peasy. Mercenary? Mercenary. Okay, that's it. No more crack brownies for you. Then I ran straight into Mephisto's council pack. It wasn't my bestest, brightest moment, but I strung them out and picked them apart as best I could. Mephisto himself was weirdly tanky, likely because I was still using a maiden pike at this point in the playthrough, but I continued to puncture his eardrums until he exploded into a pile of random assorted rares, none of which were pikes or spears. Time for Act 4. My damage was starting to fall off a little bit in Act 4 Nightmare, but most mobs that weren't Venom Lords were still dying in 1 to 2 hits. Then I stabbed an angel who became evil for some reason, but all he needed was some incredibly violent acupuncture on his face. Then I got to the Hellforge and received a severe ass beating from Hephaestus. Turns out, not having a shield makes you squishy. The Hellforge itself rewarded me with a foul rune. Not amazing, but it is useful in the early game. They never seem to drop anyway. As for Chaos, this Spearzon was capable of taking down the worst mobs this area had to offer, and then the rest of Chaos was cleared with no problems. After dealing with the bosses, the weird yellow-green version of Nightmare Diablo had been summoned. All throughout the playthrough, the Spearzon had felt pretty squishy, mostly because not having a shield really hurts the defensives. But surprisingly, this Zon was able to stand up to Nightmare Diablo just fine, and I even got a nice tan from his Ultra Death Laser. In no time at all, Nightmare Diablo went down. Act 4 Nightmare was only a small obstacle for a Spearzon who's still using a maiden pike. Also, this armor was kind of insane. Okay, not really, but it had life and res, and I needed both of those very badly. Our good friend Margot Robert was able to take her daily walk through an active war zone with virtually no issues. Exceptional spears and pikes continued to not exist throughout the rest of Nightmare, but maxing out Jab and Fend did give me a nice damage boost. But that didn't matter because a Fizz Immune Burning Soul pack instantly spawned after kicking an urn. Why are you like this, game? Naturally, rescuing Anya was absolutely mandatory for this playthrough. I was starting to get extra concerned for the Spearzon's health and safety because hell was fast approaching. I still wasn't max res, and I didn't even have 1k HP. But if this run was going to go wrong, it would go wrong here at Nightmare Ancients. My natural instinct was to separate them, because I just wasn't feeling good about face tanking 3 incredibly pissed off barbarians. Madoc rolled with a resistance to magic and an immunity to cold and lightning. All of these mods were completely useless against a physical Spearzon. I ripped apart his body and broke his spirit in a matter of seconds. Talik was notably tankier and he had cold enchanted. While he was generally non-threatening, I did get exposed as a fool who didn't have Cannot Be Frozen. Talik was killed until he died, which meant I had to deal with Korlik and his bizarre jumping-related behavior. The good news is that in a few seconds, Korlik evaporated, and I had finished one of the easier Nightmare Ancients I've had so far. After all this time, the game had finally tossed a decent unique my way. The only problem is that they were unique razor arrows. It was the game's way of throwing shade at me for picking the incorrect leveling build. I'm still committed to it though. Aside from that, the World Stone Keep was jam-packed full of mobs that got nice and bunched up for me. The Spearzon was able to stand up to the Bale Waves, and the Mercenary showed me why I should never give him the Face of Horror mask. Then I began the stabbing process against Bale's face, and even though he slightly teleported around, nothing could stop me from beating Nightmare difficulty on a mean build. Bale went straight to the ground. Margot Robert survived Nightmare and got to go home with a green essence. And I was on my way to hell as a conqueror. It might sound strange, but Nightmare difficulty actually felt easier than normal did on the Spearzon. When starting out, spears are slow and don't really do a lot of damage, but this build was really starting to take off for me once I had gotten a non-zero amount of increased attack speed. Going into hell, I was level 55. A lot of my stats were going into strength and dexterity, so I could use an exceptional spear whenever I get it to drop. For my gear, I was using a rampage and a maiden pike, purely for the IAS, but it did enough damage on its own. I can confirm that the rest of my gear absolutely existed at one point in time. I tried to stack as much life, res, and attack rating as I possibly could for my charms. My 2 main attacks, Fend and Jab, were maxed out. Jab Mastery is really good, but I only had 1 point into it. That's because I was putting my points into Penetrate. I wanted to max this out first because it made the most sense to me. Attack rating is a problem in the early game. At this point, I had 2 clear choices to make on what to do next. I could either die instantly and horribly to an archer pack in hell, or I could commit horrific atrocities against a bunch of farm animals in Nightmare Cows. Yeah, that sounded good to me. Even with the weapon from normal, Nightmare Cows was going pretty well for the most part. My only question is, why do these boots need 125 strength to wear? I was deeply offended. As usual, Nightmare Cows are my go-to place for getting gems, runes, and crafting bases to craft bases with. It was also my best chance at getting skillers and charms with resistances before going into hell. I channeled my anxiety and depression into IDing this amulet into an Angelic Zammy, but I got a Tal Zammy instead. Sure, just throw the best set amulet at my face. I tried bricking it, but it got 2 in PK. I knew I had good RNG on my side when I got this unique Grim Shield to drop. It doesn't do anything for me, but if I can find this item, then surely I can find a Lycander's Flank. But Amazon bases in general are a real bastard to get apparently. I went like 20 runs, and I hadn't seen any rare or unique spears. But whenever I saw any kind of blue spear or ceremonial javelin, I would naturally drop what I was doing and get to crafting. All I can say is, who needs Lycander's Flank when he can just craft a spear with 388 enhanced damage? Actually, Lycander's would still be very nice, but this weapon was extremely acceptable. Whenever it slammed for 4 sockets, I knew I had a weapon that was worthy of sinking all of my shale runes into. Now I was playing the video game, just tag the Satan cows one time and move on. I also dug out this unique light plate out of a rock. It's not useful for me right now, but that sanctuary aura would carry me very far in the very near future. And to round things off, I pulled an unrune out of a cow's brain while it was still alive. I could use this unrune to upgrade my current weapon into an elite base if I wanted to. Later on, I found a code rune and made a hustle with it. This armor would grant me a criminally illegal amount of increased attack speed, and I think I can call that good enough. With everything said and done, I would actually be going into hell as a level 67. My resistances still weren't maxed, but I at least had a nice amount of fire res and light res. I was holding off on upgrading my spear because I still didn't have the stats to use an elite base. The rest of my gear was replaced with semi-degenerate crafted gear. There was still room for improvement, but I was as ready for hell as I was going to be. My charm luck was a lot worse than it usually was, but I was still able to get a couple of them replaced. Skills were mostly the same, except now I had Penetrate maxed out for maximum penetration. My plan was to add a few points into Critical Strike and go from there. With all that being said, it was finally time to start running directly into the worst packs imaginable. As one would hope, the Spearzon was able to competently clear out the Den of Evil. I chose to keep the Blessed Day Mercenary instead of hiring a Dark Act 4 Mercenary because I didn't feel like I needed the amp damage at this time. I spent all of Act 1 running around like a psychopath, killing every boss pack I could for potential drops. In the underground passage, I got a foul rune to drop, which made Obedience or Lionheart a possibility. So far, Act 1 Hell had been jam-packed full of evil degenerate Midora boss packs, but I would be okay as long as I killed them before they killed me. I did have 1 or 2 incidents where I nearly died horribly to some random damage. It scared the absolute shit out of me. Then I started taking everybody's lunch money until I finally reached Andariel. The fight started out great until she immediately chunked me for half of my health. I noticed my health was rapidly draining from the poison. Why did she do so much damage? It likely had to do with my poison res being at negative 28. Yeah, that would probably do it. I stocked up on antidote potions as though I were fighting Rothma or something. But the antidote potions made all the difference in the world. Turns out, you need resistances to survive. The Spearzon tore Andariel apart until she exploded from anxiety and depression. Act 1 Hell was finished once and for all. I continued to get slapped around by cold enchanted boss packs in Act 2 Hell. The damage of the Spearzon was really good, but the problem was that I was really squishy. And then you get to places like the Maggot Lair that have mobs that are incredibly immune to physical punishment. But I had a solution to that conundrum. The Sanctuary Aura from Heavenly Garb would remove this annoying physical immunity, except it didn't work. Sanctuary Aura only removes physical immunities from undead mobs. But that's why we have teleport staffs. I'll be taking that away from you. Goodbye forever. On the bright side, the Spearzon was perfectly capable of mowing down the bastard Snake Temple. I'll be taking that. Thank you. Goodbye forever. Okay, let's try Heavenly Garb again. Oh no, there's a massive fanaticism ghost and it's immediately dead. Everything's working as intended. Naturally, every single boss pack in Tal Rasha's tomb was cursed and multi-shot. Thank you, video game. But it was okay, because my deeds of valor was being rewarded with a G-face. This was the item I needed for this exact, and it's gone forever. Good luck getting another one. Finally, it was time for my daily beating from Duriel. My plan for this fight was to violently tattoo Duriel's face while standing perfectly still. For a giant bug man, he was difficult to hit, but when my shots landed, they landed hard. After a small amount of time, Duriel violently exploded. He also dropped a unique mithril point, which was definitely not Stone Ravens or Lycanders. What an ass. Generally speaking, Act 3 Hell was one of the easier acts for the Spearzon. Every now and again, the video game would remind me that I was mortal and I could die very, very easily. Why is it so much damage? By far the biggest threat to my existence were these bastard Satan dolls. It's the only mob that actively punishes you for killing them. But what am I gonna do? Not kill them? All the other quests were completed with no problems whatsoever. Not even a council with stone skin could last more than 4 seconds against the pegging lady. She knows exactly what she's doing. The council was incapable of defeating me in combat, but they did defeat my morale when one of them dropped an ethereal champion sword. No, man, you can't do that. You can't just drop an F Doombringer when I'm playing single player and it's not my barbarian, and it also rolled 15% max life. How dare you? We have to brick this item. This item simply has to brick. 10% FCR. Isn't this just the perfect SSF item? Doesn't this item perfectly capture the spirit of a solo self-found challenge? An F Doombringer slammed with faster cast rate. Okay, time to get lost in the horrible durance of death. Oh, well that was easy. When I got to Mephisto, I knew I was in for a wild ride when I saw an active conviction aura on one of the council mobs. I kited Mephisto so I could begin the kerfuffle without interference. Mephisto is the Lord of Hatred, and he's also the— oh, he's dead. I couldn't even finish my sentence. Act 3 Hell was completed with only one horrible near-death experience. Act 4 Hell is when things tend to get a little shaky. The mobs here like to do just a little bit of damage at this point in the game. At the very least, I was still surviving, and I just needed to keep getting levels so I can keep not dying. Oh, that's a huge pack of burning souls with conviction aura. Well, this whole place needs to be nuked with a nuclear bomb. On the bright side, burning souls are good for unique rings. Oh, fuck you. After Iswalling Iswal, I made a straight shot to the Hellforge, where I encountered an extremely immune to physical Hephaestus. Not to worry, I'll just reroll the game. Immune to physical again. Alright, one more time. Damn it. Alright. I'll hire the Dark Act 4 mercenary. I have absolutely no gear whatsoever for him, but I'll make it work. Okay, Hephaestus dead. It's time to do the thing. An Io rune? I got a foul rune for my Nightmare Forge. That was uncalled for, game. The Spearzon was able to repeatedly penetrate all the mob packs in the Chaos Sanctuary. It's not my preference to farm Hell Chaos with less than 1300 HP, but the Spearzon's damage was high enough to make this area perfectly farmable. This was great news, because I would be able to farm up some gear for Ubers and Declone if and when it came to it. Finally, it was time for me to take 8 million damage from Diablo's laser, except that's not what happened at all in this fight. Whatever testosterone Diablo might have had in Normal and Nightmare had seemingly gone away for Hell difficulty. Several acts of violence had been committed against Diablo's face, and in exactly 0 seconds, Hell Diablo evaporated. Just one more act of debauchery to go. Also, I made a respect token from all the essences I dropped this playthrough. Okay, time for Act 5. The final act started off very smoothly, and that was great news, because now would have been a really bad time to die. Even though the Spearzon's damage was still carrying me through the campaign, I started thinking about something. Since I was fast approaching the Hell Ancients, I figured now would be a good time to upgrade this spear into a matriarchal spear. The reason I didn't do it earlier was because of its high stat requirements. But now that I'm a higher level, I could work with the stat requirements of my extremely fair and balanced weapon. I used that respect token and put in enough stats to wear said matriarchal spear with the rest in a vitality. Same skills, of course. Now I had very slightly less HP on an already squishy build, but now I did like twice the damage as before. This glass cannon was glassier than ever. Also, please feel free to drop a shaft stop, game. Naturally, the frozen river spawned in a bunch of friendly lancers and succubus witches to help with my panic attacks. No, it's fine. I didn't want to live anyway. Seriously though, look what I have to deal with. I literally have to run straight into that in order to deal with it. I'm a melee build. I had to take it just a little slowly, just a little bit, but I cleared the way to Anya and I got to rescue her from the strange white substance that covered her body and face. I can't tell you how badly I needed this paper. No, I'm good. I'm good on that. As was prophesized, the extremely fragile Spearzon arrived at Hell Ancients at last. I knew I had to take this fight seriously, so naturally, I commenced the separation process. Madoc was first, and the Spearzon immediately split Madoc's body in half with her huge penetrative pole. It must have been his first time. Korlik opened with his usual jumping shenanigans, but no amount of quads could stop him from dying in like 5 seconds. Good God, what game am I playing right now? Surely it was a fluke. Talik was going to be the real fight, because he rolled with stone skin. Except it didn't matter at all. Talik's existence had been totally atomized in like 6 seconds. All I had to do now was clear Worldstone Keep. No problem whatsoever. As soon as I entered the area, I bumped into the most cursed Might Ore witch pack I've ever seen in my life. Let's not go in that direction. The first area was populated entirely by the worst mob I could ever not want in my life. Thankfully, level 2 was right in front of me. Now it's time for easy mode. And then I immediately ran into a Might Ore Burning Soul pack. God damn it. Sadly, level 2 had a bunch of very long hallways, which required me to run very large distances towards the worst mobs imaginable. My method was to take things slowly and lure 1 or 2 at a time. No need to complicate things in hardcore. Thankfully, level 3 didn't take all that long to find either. The hard part was done. Now it was time for the extremely hard part. I had to deal with massive witch packs that bore a complete immunity to all my physical attacks. And yes, I did run into a huge fanaticism witch pack. I ran into a couple, actually. I sensibly attempted to skip everything, because screw this. But as I got deeper, things just got worse. And worse. And worse. Needless to say, I had to strategically withdraw. Had instant death written all over it. Once again, I took things as slowly as I could. The only way for me to survive this altercation was with patience. I try not to reset these maps, mainly because of the video, but also because I could just get the same mobs anyway. Or worse mobs. You're probably wondering, did I encounter Stygian dolls as soon as I entered the throne room? Of course I did. The bastard video game was really making me earn this one today. But as usual, I took things slowly and picked apart small groups so I wouldn't get overwhelmed. I made it safe and sound to the end, and I spent my time murdering all of Bale's children right as they spawned. Even the weird dinosaur mobs felt like a luxurious vacation compared to the hell I went through earlier. At long last, it was time to finish the fight. I began my usual murder ritual against Bale's brain. I would get unfortunate strings of misses against him, but Bale's HP was being picked apart whenever my hits landed. Bale was otherwise extremely cooperative throughout the rest of the fight. By now, I had a few points into dodge, and that allowed me to not take any damage from melee attacks while standing still or attacking. And that's exactly what I did. I stood perfectly still until Bale's organs were ejected from his body. The video game was finished. Bale was dead. The World Stone was still screwed anyway, but our good friend Margot Robert had become a guardian in hardcore single player. With brute force and moderate stupidity, this Amazon was able to clear the entire game as a physical two-handed Spearzon. The pegging lady will be making a trip to Uber Tristram in the next video, which should be coming out soon, so be on the lookout for that. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching the video, and if you enjoyed what you saw, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. A big shout out to my members and patrons for supporting the channel and making these videos happen. If you would like to support the channel, check out the Patreon or consider becoming a member. I will see you all on the next one. Take care and stay safe.